All right, let's get started. Today we're going someplace really cold. We're diving into Antarctica. It's that massive continent at the bottom of the world, the one covered in ice. It seems like Antarctica always sparks our imagination. Kind of like those old maps with "Here be monsters" written on them. For all the territories that hadn't been explored yet, there's just something about the unknown that pulls us in.
It is. It's definitely a primal instinct, this human curiosity,
Huh.
about what might be hidden just beyond what we already know. And I think Antarctica, with those mile-thick ice sheets, those brutal temperatures, and the fierce winds there, it definitely qualifies as beyond the familiar. It's one of those challenging places to explore on the entire planet, which is probably why we still know so little about what's actually hidden beneath all that ice.
Exactly. We're talking about a place so massive that even Mount Fuji would be dwarfed by the sheer scale of the ice sheet. It's amazing how much is hidden beneath the surface. But what if, instead of just penguins and research stations, Antarctica holds evidence of something more? Today, we're going to plunge into the world of ancient aliens and secret structures. It's based on this episode of Ancient Aliens that you shared with me and some additional sources that I was able to find. So, Ancient Aliens is a show on the History Channel, and it explores the theory that extraterrestrials visited Earth at some point in the past.
Right. And this episode that you shared focuses on the idea that Antarctica could be hiding evidence of some kind of extraterrestrial activity, maybe even a hidden base.
Mhm.
And it really plays up the vastness and the hidden depths of the continent.
Yeah, I thought the visual of Mount Fuji being completely dwarfed by the Antarctic ice sheet was really impactful. It
Yeah.
just drives home how much we simply don't know about what's down there. The episode also suggests that there's more going on in Antarctica than meets the eye. There's more human and perhaps non-human activity happening there than we realize.
It's definitely an enticing idea for sure, especially when you consider that Antarctica was only discovered about 250 years ago, which is pretty recent in the grand scheme of human history.
Mm.
And even today, because of those thick ice sheets, we can't even see the actual landmass of the continent with naked eye. It's like
Yeah.
this giant frozen mystery box just waiting to be opened.
Okay, so let's try to pry open that box a little bit. One of the sources you sent me was an interview with a retired Navy SEAL code named Spartan 1, and it was conducted by Linda Moulton Howe, who's a well-known investigative journalist who often looks into UFOs and government conspiracies. And Spartan 1 claims to have been part of a secret mission to Antarctica back in August of 2003.
Yeah, and it's really important to note that Spartan 1 insisted on remaining anonymous during that interview. He cited some security concerns. And, while that anonymity definitely adds an element of intrigue, it also makes it much harder to verify his story.
Right, I get what you mean. But still, his account is pretty captivating. He says his team was sent to the southeast coast of Antarctica on what he says was a research reconnaissance mission. Their official objective was to find a specific individual and then bring information back. But what they stumbled upon, he says, was something far more extraordinary.
Yeah. Spartan 1 describes encountering this massive octagonal structure that was protruding from the ice. Just picture it. An eight-sided structure partially buried in the ice in one of the most remote and inhospitable places on Earth. It really sparks the imagination.
It does, and it gets even more interesting because Spartan 1 claims that the structure had these massive doors, like 18 to 30 feet thick, and he claims that they could be opened with just a single finger despite the freezing temperatures. So if that's true, that raises so many questions about the technology involved. How could doors that massive be so easily moved in those extreme conditions? I mean, even here we struggle to keep our car doors from freezing shut in the winter, and that's nowhere near as cold as Antarctica.
That's a great point. The engineering challenges of building and operating something like that in Antarctica would be immense. And then there's the temperature difference that Spartan 1 describes. He claims that outside it was negative 40 degrees, but inside the structure it was a comfortable 68 to 72 degrees. How would you maintain a temperature like that in such a harsh environment? What kind of technology would even be needed to do that?
And just to make it even more mysterious, Spartan 1 says the structure was lit from within by this lime green light, but they couldn't find the source. And he also describes the walls being covered in hieroglyphics unlike anything he'd ever seen before. Not your typical Egyptian hieroglyphs.
That's a really intriguing detail, if that's true. Who created those hieroglyphs and what do they mean? Could this be evidence of an ancient advanced civilization that we've never known about? Or are we stepping into the realm of extraterrestrial possibilities here, like Ancient Aliens suggests?
So let's pause here for a second. Spartan 1's story is definitely captivating, but as you mentioned earlier, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So what kind of evidence would we actually need to see to give these claims more weight?
Well, for starters, if other people came forward with similar accounts of encountering these unusual structures or artifacts in Antarctica,
Yeah.
that would lend a lot more credibility to Spartan 1's story.
Right. If you had multiple independent sources, then it would be much harder to dismiss it as just one person's imagination.
Right. I can see that multiple eyewitnesses could really change the whole picture. But wouldn't that also increase the chances that it could be some kind of coordinated hoax, especially if all of these eyewitnesses were somehow connected to each other?
That's a really valid point. We have to consider all the possibilities here. It's a very delicate balance between remaining open to the potential for the extraordinary while also maintaining a healthy amount of skepticism at the same time. Multiple eyewitness accounts would be really compelling. But what about physical evidence? Wouldn't that be the ultimate game changer? I mean, just imagine if we had actual images of one of these octagonal structures, or even better, a sample of that strange green light that Spartan 1 described.
Absolutely. Physical evidence would be crucial.
Yeah.
If we could get a drone into one of these alleged structures and have it send back some video footage,
Mhm.
or if we could obtain an actual piece of that structure for analysis, that would be a monumental breakthrough. Of course, any physical evidence would have to be very rigorously examined and verified by independent experts to rule out any chance of fabrication or misinterpretation.
Yeah, peer review would be essential, but wouldn't it be incredibly difficult to obtain that kind of evidence in a place like Antarctica?
Yeah.
It's not exactly easy to just pop down there for a quick weekend expedition.
It would be a massive undertaking for sure. The logistics of even mounting an expedition to Antarctica are so incredibly complex and expensive. But just think about the potential rewards here. If we were to discover definitive proof of an ancient civilization or even extraterrestrial life in Antarctica, it would completely revolutionize our understanding of human history and our place in the universe.
It would be a paradigm shift of epic proportions. Okay, so let's play with that idea for a moment. Let's say hypothetically that these structures do exist and they are of alien origin. What are the implications? What would that mean for humanity?
That's where things get really interesting and potentially a bit unsettling. If an advanced extraterrestrial civilization did visit Earth in the distant past, it raises so many questions. Why did they come here? What were their intentions? Did they interact with early humans in any way? And maybe most importantly, are they still here, somewhere out there, watching us?
That's a chilling thought. It reminds me of that famous quote from Arthur C. Clarke. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. If we were to encounter technology that's far beyond our comprehension, wouldn't it seem like magic or even divine intervention to some people? It could completely challenge our understanding of reality itself.
Absolutely. It would force us to reevaluate our place in the cosmos and the very nature of intelligence. It would be a truly transformative event with the potential to reshape our entire civilization.
But how would humanity even react to a discovery like that? Would it unite us as a species? Or would it just create chaos and fear? It's hard to even imagine how society would respond to something that monumental.
It's impossible to predict with any certainty. But I imagine there would be a very wide range of reactions. Some people would be filled with awe and wonder, eager to learn everything they could about our alien visitors, and then others might be terrified, fearing the unknown and any potential threat that these beings could pose. And of course, there would be those who would simply deny the evidence altogether. They'd cling to their existing beliefs no matter what.
It's so fascinating to consider all of the sociological and psychological implications of a discovery like that. It would shake the foundations of so many of our belief systems. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here. We have all of these captivating stories, these hints of something extraordinary hidden beneath the ice. But we're still lacking that concrete evidence to prove it. So where do we go from here? How do we balance our natural curiosity with a healthy amount of skepticism?
I think the key is to approach these kinds of mysteries with a very discerning mind. We should absolutely be open to the possibility that there are things out there that we don't yet understand, that our current knowledge isn't the be-all and end-all. But we also need to be very critical of the information that we encounter, especially when it comes to claims that are as extraordinary as these. We need to demand evidence, not just speculation.
So in other words, don't dismiss the possibility outright, but don't just blindly accept it either. Keep an open mind, but keep your critical thinking skills sharp.
Exactly. And it's also important to remember that the lack of definitive proof doesn't necessarily mean that something isn't true. It just means we need to keep searching, keep exploring, keep asking those questions. And that's the beauty of science, isn't it? It's this never-ending quest for knowledge and understanding.
It really is. And that quest can lead us to some pretty amazing discoveries. Okay, but let's flip the script for a minute. Let's say someone did want to create a hoax about ancient aliens in Antarctica. What would be the motivation for that? Why would someone do that?
Well, there are a few possibilities, I think. Some people might do it for fame or notoriety, hoping to gain some attention or profit from their story. Others might have a more ideological agenda, wanting to promote certain beliefs or theories.
It's kind of like those reality TV shows where people stage those elaborate pranks or fake paranormal encounters. There's definitely an audience for that kind of content, especially online. And let's not forget about good old-fashioned disinformation campaigns. In today's world, it's easier than ever to spread false information, especially when it's wrapped up in something as alluring and mysterious as Antarctica.
That's right. Antarctica, with its remoteness and its mystique, makes a perfect backdrop for those kinds of narratives. It's a place that's so difficult to verify, which makes it even easier for misinformation to take root. And then with the rise of social media, these stories can spread like wildfire, regardless of their validity.
So how do we, as curious and informed listeners, navigate this landscape of claims and counterclaims? How do we separate fact from fiction, especially when it comes to something as tantalizing as the possibility of ancient aliens in Antarctica?
It all comes back to critical thinking. We need to carefully evaluate the sources of information. Consider the potential biases and motivations of everyone involved. And always look for corroborating evidence. Just because something sounds really exciting or fits nicely into our preconceived notions doesn't actually make it true. We have to let the evidence or the lack thereof guide our conclusions.
That's a great point. It's easy to get swept up in the excitement of a good story, especially when it involves something as intriguing as ancient aliens. But we have to remember to engage our critical thinking skills and not just accept everything we hear at face value.
Exactly. And sometimes the most valuable discoveries are the ones that challenge our assumptions and force us to re-examine what we thought we knew.
It's like we're looking at this giant frosty puzzle box, and we just can't help but try to peek inside. But as tempting as it is to get lost in all this excitement about ancient aliens and hidden structures, we have to remember that sometimes there are more down-to-earth explanations for some of these mysteries.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can't rule out the possibility that some of these accounts, like the one from Spartan 1, could just be misinterpretations, exaggerations, or even outright hoaxes. Human perception isn't perfect, especially in these extreme environments like Antarctica, where the cold and the isolation and the sensory deprivation can really play tricks on the mind.
It makes sense. I know even I've seen strange shapes in the shadows when I'm tired or in an unfamiliar place. It's really easy to let our imaginations run wild, especially when we're primed to see something extraordinary. But couldn't some of these claims also be explained by natural phenomena? I mean, Antarctica is geologically active. It's got all these unusual ice formations and strange magnetic anomalies, and there are even reports of glowing organisms down there.
You're right, Antarctica is full of natural wonders that could easily be mistaken for something more outlandish. Those ice formations can create these optical illusions that resemble structures or even faces, and the aurora australis, the southern lights, can produce these incredible light displays that might be misinterpreted as something artificial.
So how do we, as curious explorers of knowledge, navigate this complex landscape of claims and counterclaims? How do we sift through all the noise and get closer to the truth, whatever that truth might be?
I think the key is to approach these mysteries with a healthy balance of curiosity and skepticism. We should be open to the possibility that there are things out there that we don't yet understand, things that might challenge our current scientific paradigms. But we also need to be cautious about accepting any extraordinary claims without sufficient evidence.
So it's about asking the tough questions and demanding evidence and not jumping to conclusions, right? Letting the evidence or the lack thereof guide our understanding.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's also important to remember that just because we haven't found definitive proof of something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Just because we haven't found definitive proof of ancient aliens or hidden structures in Antarctica doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means we need to keep searching and keep exploring, keep asking questions.
And that's what makes this whole endeavor so fascinating, right? This pursuit of knowledge is a journey without a final destination. There will always be more to discover and more to uncover, more to ponder.
It is. It's really exciting. We might never have all the answers, but the journey is incredibly rewarding.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the mysteries of Antarctica, I think the biggest takeaway for me and hopefully for everyone listening is that the unknown is this really powerful force. It draws us in and sparks our curiosity and challenges us to expand our understanding of the world and our place in it.
And I think that's the essence of human exploration. We're driven by this fundamental desire to understand the universe and our place in it. And whether we're searching for ancient aliens or hidden structures or just trying to better understand the natural world, that quest for knowledge is what makes us human.
That's a great way to put it. And on that note, we'll leave you to ponder the mysteries of Antarctica and the vast unknown that's still out there. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep that sense of wonder alive. Until next time, keep those parkas handy and your minds open to the possibilities.